there, and if you've turned in, you are listening to Biters, the Walking Dead podcast. And we have been away for a few days, a couple of weeks actually, and we have some explaining to do. This is Kirk Manley, as you all well and know, and usually sitting next to me is Jeff Marzik, but today we have a special co-host with us, and her name is Dianne. Dianne, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, this is Dianne Maythorn from Willow, Alaska, and I really wish I was sitting next to Kirk because I think my weather would probably be better.
Well, I'd rather you be sitting here next to me than me sitting up there next to you. That's just
I can't say that I blame you.
I love Alaska on my TV.
None of that you see on TV is real. Oh, and there I go. I broke my vow not to swear right away.
We do our best here at Biters to kind of keep the profanity to a limit, but it's impossible to completely restrain ourselves. So our apologies. Well, there's been some changes. Some of you out there in listener land have probably been reading and following on the Facebook page, and so some of this will not be new news to you, but there have been some changes with Biters, and so I want to try and bring everybody up to speed. So first I thought I'd read a letter we actually just received today from a listener in Germany. And that's fantastic in and of itself, Dianne, don't you think?
I think it's amazing, and I also think that what she has to say is incredibly timely, so it really couldn't have been more perfect.
It is. So Susan wrote, "Hi, Biters. Hello, Jeff and Kirk. My local iTunes has no recent listing of Biters podcasts since the wonderful Fear the Walking Dead Season 1, Episode 6 with guests Justin and Kelly. Congratulations on that one. Really liked it. FYI, I download from the German iTunes store and do have access to basically everything worldwide. Most of the podcasts I download originate in the U.S., and I have not encountered any problems with other subscriptions. You cannot take a break now. Now that the main show is back, or go into hiding behind strong walls made of cold rolled steel. Seriously, though, can it be that your podcast was renamed? Please let me know, and all those thousands of fans you have. I think she's being a tad generous. Number.
What is it, like 10, 9, 8?
Yeah. Somewhere in that number. Maybe double digits now.
Nice.
Maybe. All right. Know where we can. Do you know where we? Please let me know where we can download your insights and discussions of the new Walking Dead episodes. It seems that I was not able to reach you at biterspodcast@gmail.com. Not sure why that might be the case, but I guess you never got my comments on Fear the Walking Dead. If we didn't read them, then I'm afraid we didn't, Susan, and my apologies. To be on the safe side, I am now using the Southgate Media Group address. And by the way, for everybody, that's the southgatemediagroup@gmail.com. Or you can send a friendly zombie with a note. I think I'm just going to go with the email. The Walking Dead is not the same without you. I don't mind having to wait a full week before you upload. Just please let us know where to find you. Beeping the horn.
Which, of course, is a perfect segue.
Oh, yeah. That's, I should have got a horn and brought, as a sound effect for the end there. So, it occurred when we read this letter, it occurred to me that it would be apropos to read it because, Jeff and I, and Rob too, I think kind of focus on the discussions that take place on our Facebook page, and there's probably 15 or 20 people that engage in that at that location with us and post stuff up and everything else. But the reality is that the majority probably of our listeners do not participate in that or visit that and have no idea why all of a sudden they're not hearing any biters. So that being said, there's been some changes. Jeff Marzik, my usual co-host, life has just gotten too busy for him. And he is taking on a number of new ventures, focusing on his writing and doing some things that he needs to do for himself. And as a result, he's had to look at ways to cut back and generate more time for himself. I believe he also had a podcast that he co-hosted for the American Horror Story. I think it was called Disturbed. Is that right, Diane?
I think so. I think you're right.
And then he also did a Flash podcast with Scout Malkovich or Malkic. I'm probably totally brutalizing his name. My apologies, Scott. But he's cut all of that out and is moving on with other stuff. So it may change down the road that he may have more time available or whatever. But at this point, he needs to move on to other stuff. So when he told me that, I had just kind of assumed I would continue on with a new co-host, but it became clear that that wasn't going to work for me either at this time. That there were a lot of other things going on with me as well that would benefit from some more focus and more time. So I thought maybe this was a sign that it was a good time also on a high note to kind of step down myself. So I got in touch with Rob and decided to also not move forward as the co-host for Biters and to let a new regime take over. That kind of threw things in a little bit of chaos and just derailed things for a little while. And but luckily, I'm very fortunate for everybody, I think, Dianne has stepped up and offered to kind of take the reins. So want to thank you very much, Dianne, for that. I think you're going to be an excellent host. You've been a long-time listener of the show, a long-time participant on the Facebook page. We've always valued your comments and your inputs on the show, and you've always generated and contributed a lot of great stuff and ideas. So I think you'll be a fantastic lead person for the show.
Well, I have to just say, I know you're going to roll your eyes at me, but I'm really sad that both of you are leaving. And this quickly became one of my favorite podcasts about The Walking Dead. I listened to several, but this is the one that I have always looked forward to. So,
well, that's very kind. That's very kind and great. Always great to hear. And I have to say thanks to so many people that posted up and sent us notes and said very similar thoughts and sentiments about about the show and about our being on it. And it was really, really heartwarming and rewarding. So I think I speak for Jeff as well when I say thank you to everybody for all your great comments and for listening and supporting the show. And I really hope that everyone will continue to stick with the show during this transition. And to that point, I felt a responsibility to step back in at least to help and assist in the transition. So the plan that Dianne and I have put together now is that we're going to do this cast that we're doing right now, and we're going to cover the season 6 premiere, first time again.
And episode 2,
and then
JSS.
Right, and then JSS. And then we're going to watch tonight's episode. And then on Tuesday night, or Tuesday afternoon, we're going to record our thoughts on that, which is, I believe, Thank You, I think is the name of that episode.
It is.
And then so this episode that we're recording right now should post Monday or Tuesday. And then on hopefully Wednesday or Thursday, we will post up the new episode for Thank You. At that point, the show Biters will be on schedule with The Walking Dead. You guys will get 2 podcasts in 1 week. Woohoo! And then they will be on the regular schedule where they'll watch on Sundays. And I assume I don't know if you guys have set up when you're going to do it and everything else. Do you want to talk to that at all? Or?
So I think there's definitely one person who is going to take the other chair. There is another person who is seriously interested in the other chair. So this may become a 3-person podcast.
Wow.
Not really sure yet.
Cool.
The other thing is, of course, and I've said this to you and I'm going to say it on the podcast itself, we would love to have you and Jeff back at any point when you guys want to jump in just for a guest, just for, just because you were particularly inspired by a particular episode, or if you want to come back as a co-host. I mean...
well, that's very, very kind. Thank you.
The door is completely open.
Well, I
so-
definitely, I'll go out on a limb right now and just not limb, but go out and say I would love to be on for the mid-season finale.
Yeah, you and I had talked about that, and I think that's
that
a
would be
great
fun.
idea.
I'm sure I'll have lots of ideas and thoughts about that I'd love to share. So yeah.
Good, very good.
So, that being said, there may have not been some things we answered or didn't answer in that little intro. So if you have any other questions, of course, feel free to, contact us, post up at the Facebook page, or write us at southgatemediagroup@gmail.com or biterspodcast@gmail.com. And, either next week when we record, or Tuesday when we record, I'll answer them, or Dianne will answer them going forward.
And I'll be honest, I spend a lot of time on Facebook, probably way too much. So that's a really good place to reach me.
Cool. So going back in time a little bit, this is kind of cool because it's kind of like, these two episodes have probably, well, not more than any other episode, but certainly two in a row that have manipulated and played with the concept of time. So we're going to do that too. We're going to go back in time and we're going to talk about the premiere.
Well, and the other thing that's a beautiful thing is the second episode is really taking time at the same place as the first episode, or in the same time as the first episode. So it really is pretty perfect.
Yeah. So what were the numbers on the premiere?
So numbers on the premiere, it was 14.6 million on Sunday night itself. But when you look at live plus 3, so the people who are watching up to 3 days later, it was 20 million.
Holy crap.
I know. I was thinking back to that and I thought, okay, here we're starting out at a pilot that was roughly just under 6 million. And here we are 6 years into this series and we're looking at 20 million people watching the premiere.
I'm sure neither of us know for sure, but that sounds to me unheard of.
It's still, from everything that I've read, the highest rated television show in the history of television. I mean, in terms of viewership.
I mean, I've heard, of series gaining in popularity. A lot of times the Star Trek series, I remember in a more recent time frame, started out slow, but by the third season, had really gained strong. But that would level off,
right?
And it just seems like this just doesn't level off.
I'm telling you, I'm having a pilot celebratory party for all of my friends who've never watched, because now they have to subscribe to Biters,
or else risk losing your friendship.
There you go, exactly. And I figure what better way than having a celebratory pilot party in the new house. So
yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. So that's great. Those are great numbers. I mean, it seems like more and more too people are using that +3.
Right. I actually did do a little reading about that today, and it sounds like that is really because so many people have DVRs or so many people watch it the next day on iTunes. That's really the number that they're shooting for.
Right.
So let's see. As we both know, Nicotero was the director. I love it when he directs.
Yeah.
And then Gimple and a guy named Matthew Negrete, I hope I'm not killing his name, were the writers of the episode.
Right. I have yet to not like an episode that Mr. Gimple is involved in directly.
I have to agree. Nicotero and Gimple are the dream team.
Yeah, I agree. You always can count on it when you see those guys. So first time again, right, is what it was titled?
Right.
What do you think that's about? What do you think that's referring to?
So I saw a few callbacks to other seasons that I'll talk about a little bit later. But I also think, of course, the main thing is that it's talking about Rick's relationship with Morgan.
Yeah.
And them coming to know each other again.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the only other first time, again, I thought that was kind of interesting was that this is really the first time that the Alexandrians are kind of meeting real Walker threats.
Right.
and it's the core group, the team Rick's first time again. You know what I mean? It's like,
good point.
And Rick really kind of screws that up when he's at, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to train you, I'm going to get, and then they're out on the road and he's like, okay, you guys can do this. And it's like, we don't have a fucking clue what we're supposed to do.
Okay. I mean? Do you love that visual image of the character from Alexandria? And I can't remember if it was Tobin or Carter, but like standing there looking like he was going to do some kung fu fighting with the biters.
Yeah, I think it was Carter.
That was so funny. Yeah.
So, that I think was also a part of what that title is about.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, let's see, what are we going to do for headshots?
So I stole mine from my comment on the season before I knew, or my comment on the opener before I knew I was going to actually be doing this live. Okay. So I give it 4.875 whiskey-soaked wedding rings. I really liked it.
I have to say, I think you and I spoke about this in emails or something, but or our Facebook discussions. But the whole phenomena of the scoring system has really blossomed with our listeners and with ourselves, and I think it's just awesome. It was something that certainly wasn't planned, but a couple of listeners and posters on Facebook have really run with it, and now it's kind of become something I really look forward to, or had been looking forward to when I would read the comments and stuff from people, all the creativity with what people would, head slams, door slams, whatever. The whiskey soaked wedding rings is fantastic and a good example.
Somebody made a great allusion during Fear, which was something about cutting somebody's arms or something about the torture. So I just love it. I agree. I think people are really funny.
So, what are you giving the premiere?
So that's the premiere.
Oh, you said 4.8 is what you're giving it.
4.875. Okay. I'm stealing a few decimal points from Jason and Karen over at the Walking Dead cast.
See, one of the nice things about getting someone else other than I to co-host with is you're not going to have to repeat yourself so much. It's going to be one of your finer parts of this new adventure. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to give it, anything less than that. I'm always afraid to give anything a 5, but man, I tell you, if any of them came close, this was it for me on so many levels. Which we'll talk about, but yeah, I thought it was a fantastic episode.
So, what rating system are you going to use?
The whiskey soaked wedding ring sounds pretty damn good to me. I'm going to go with that.
So I got to go with The Talking Dead for a minute. Did you watch The Talking Dead afterwards?
Yes, I think I did, and that was, I believe, Nicotero and Gimple, right?
Yeah. No, wasn't it Kevin? No, Kevin Smith was on the second one.
Yeah, Kevin Smith and guy that played the Vision.
Yeah.
Or JSS, but Nicotero and and you know who else was on it? It was Nicotero, Gimple, and then it was the actor that played Carter.
So I did not watch that. I need to go back and watch that, but I was just thinking about Kevin Smith's comment, but I'll save it for this, not his vulgar comment, but I'll save his overall comment for the second episode because he was good. I liked what he had to say.
So sticking with our format here of good, the bad, and the ugly, what were your goods?
So I have a really long list. You're going to have to bear with me.
Well, that's not good because I always have a long list.
I know. I mean, I kind of think you and I are really similar, which is I'm sick about not being able to continue podcasting with you on a regular basis. But the people who continue to listen are probably going to be somewhat relieved. So my goods, I thought that the guy that they got for Heath was perfect.
Yeah.
They did such a beautiful job bringing him alive from the comic book pages.
I totally agree.
I thought the black and white was
Wait a minute. But even,
go ahead.
I wasn't sure. I wanted to just wait a second because I wasn't sure if you had more to say about Heath. But I'm going to jump in on the Heath comment as well. I thought that they did a fantastic job with that. And what really impressed me was that the way that they did it from the moment, from the dialogue with Eugene and the gate scene all the way through his scenes with Glenn and everything else. And I'm sure a lot of this has to do with the actor. I never, by the end of it, it felt like he had been part of the cast from the beginning.
And you never questioned that he was anybody other than
Never
Heath.
questioned. Never. It was just like the way it was written, the way that the dialogue went, and the way that he acted, it just felt like this guy had always been part of Alexandria and had always been part of the show. So, yeah, they did a great job on that. What else?
I thought the black and white was beautiful. And I think you saw my comment earlier this week on Facebook saying that I heard a lot of carping on other podcasts about how people didn't like the black and white. They didn't necessarily understand it. I just thought it was so artful, and I was so appreciative of Greg Nicotero's eye for what looks good as well as what is interesting. It's visually interesting.
I completely concur. The thing I'm loving more and more about the show is the time that they seem to be putting into utilizing the art of film as much a part of the show as the show itself, instead of just setting up scenes and shooting them in a linear fashion and straightforward as if you're just there observing and not camera, instead of doing things that only film can do, whether it's manipulation of time, the fact that it's a visual medium, so playing with color, just great. I mean, and it was such a great subjective way visually to show the two different philosophies that were kind of colliding with each other here. The Morgan all life is sacred kind of philosophy versus the Rick do anything to survive kind of philosophy. So I thought that was great. Plus, who doesn't like their zombie movies in black and white? You know what I mean?
Right. So that was a callback that I missed, but talk about a callback to Romero.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when Nicotero's, a large, outspoken fan of Romero's work and of all those zombie movies. So, he's always looking for ways to kind of interject some of that, and that was no doubt some of that too. What else?
So I have to say, I just loved the use of humor. It was actually really nice to have some of the tension broken up with humor. So Morgan's reference to Michonne coming back and swiping his peanut butter protein bar.
Yeah,
I thought that was really funny. Yeah. And then the sign that the Zeds are walking past when they're headed back into Alexandria at the end of the episode says, "You're almost home."
I know. But I
just thought that moments like that with the humor were just, it was really nice to get a good laugh as well as be horrified, Absolutely. And the whole sequence with Eugene at the gate was hilarious. I know. He's got the best lines, man.
Oh my God. He was like, I respect your hair game and all these yes. Funny lines. Great to see somebody here that's just like me. And the guy's like, what are you talking about, dude? Yeah, I totally agree, and it's funny because there are times, when I'm watching the episode that things pop out at me and say, like immediately I say, that's going in my art tribute. You know what I mean? Like with JSS, when that turtle starts coming across the screen, I was like, oh shit, that turtle is so going to be in my piece. You know what I mean? And with this episode, it was the peanut butter bar. That just was like, I said, oh, this has got to have a peanut butter protein bar in it, because that was just, it was hilarious. Plus, I don't know if you know, but in the last time we saw Morgan, well, not the last time we saw Morgan, because we saw Clear. But in Clear, right, in the episode Clear, there's a scene where Michonne actually does take one of his protein bars.
Well, that's what I understand. I need to go back and watch that again.
So, that Gimple is setting up jokes that are seasons away for payoff.
That's pretty cool.
It's 3 seasons away. That was season 3. You know what I mean?
And his level, that just shows Gimple's level of dedication to the show, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, not just the
The
show,
fact
but
that he could use something like that.
yeah, not just the show too, but also to the characters. I mean, he's
Yes.
obviously got thinking, okay, these two characters are going to have, a connection at some point, and we're going to start working on that right now, and we're going to put these in, and that may change. Things happen, characters leave, story decisions be made. We go in a different direction, but I'm going to set it up so that I have that option should we get to that point down the road. And then he pulls it out of his tricks. It's awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
Go ahead.
So I guess kind of my last thing, it's a Daryl thing, and I'm trying not to be one of those if Daryl dies we riot kind of people. My sister did send me that mug, which I'm looking at right now. It kind of cracks me up, but but I liked the image of Daryl rigging his bike with zip ties. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then I just thought this episode did a nice job of kind of showing a little bit of separation between he and Rick. He's been Rick's mini-me for so long in so many ways that it's kind of nice to see Daryl becoming his own person as far as his attitudes about what it takes to survive and what they need to do. He walked up to Rick at one point, and it was when they were building the wall, and he looked over at Jesse, and he talked about taking care of ourselves. And I thought he was going to make a reference, quite honestly, to Rick getting into a relationship with Jesse and taking care of some of his more, shall we say, primal needs. And then he said to Rick, going out and finding more people is taking care of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
no,
I just
think,
really...
Go ahead. I think Daryl...
I was just going to say, I just like... I just was going to say I like the way that they've really started to create a little bit of a chasm and a separation between those two characters.
Yeah, I don't think I agree that it's a that they're building a chasm. I think that not often. I would say that there have been times in the past when they've disagreed, and I think that very gently the show has been kind of having Daryl be one of Rick's consciences, or moral compasses. I'm almost afraid to use that term because moral compass people usually end up dying. But, I can think back to when he wanted to rush the hospital, and there was a sequence where Daryl, was agreeing with Tyrese, because Tyrese is like, there's another way we can do this. We don't have to do this. We don't have to go guns blazing. And Daryl's like, we should listen to that and, use your head here and let's take this easy. And, I think the guy's got a point. You know what I mean? And there have been a few times that's been the case. And I saw this as another one of those times because he's not going to go to battle with him. He even says to him right after that scene that you just described, he says, it's your decision. So he's completely still deferring to Big Brother Rick, you know what I mean? But he is trying to help Rick not go too far off the rails. And I mean, that's really kind of what the show has kind of become. It's all about, Rick's balancing act on the tightrope between, becoming a governor lost kind of person, villain almost, or a good guy, and what he has to do to keep everybody alive, and then the people around him that kind of help keep him on that tightrope.
And I don't think that there's going to be an irrevocable chasm, but I think that we're going to see more and more differentiation between Rick and Daryl, which I think is a healthy thing. Yeah.
No, I agree. I have some insight as well on that with regards to Aaron, but we'll have to talk about it next in the next segment because it comes out of the RSS episodes. So go ahead. What else?
Okay. No. So how about you're good? I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, you said you had a lot. That wasn't a lot.
Oh, believe me, I have
you got more?
So many pages of notes.
All right. Well, I'll hit on some of mine, and you chime in if I overlap with you. The rock quarry opening just freaking blew my mind. I think it might be the coolest in the Walking Dead show history for me.
I totally loved it, and that was one of the things that I really felt like was a callback to season 1 because it made me think of the rock quarry that they stayed at outside of Atlanta.
Right. Yeah,
I
I
loved
think
it.
that there was a tip of the hat there, but this was just it was just epic. You know what I mean to me, and the fact that we had no explanation, no background. We've jumped in time again. Again they're using the great time jumping ability of film and throwing us into this crazy sequence that we have no idea how we got there. We've got other new cast members, there that we've never seen before, and this nightmare that starts to unfold, and it just blew my mind. I mean, I thought it was a really ingenious way to open up the season. I would put it on par with the season 3 opener, where they have the quiet opening and they take the house without saying a word to each other, and then take this.
I love that opening.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite openings of the show. But I think this might be up there even further. I just if I had any other notes on that, it was very.
Well, let's really honest.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well,
I was just going to say, just this sheer number of zombies,
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, we've seen hordes, we've seen herds, but this was something completely other than that, and that was awesome. And then the fact that they're talking about how they're going to deal with this, and then all of a sudden they have to do it as Abraham said, they got to do it live, and that right. It was just awesome, and then to come back from the break and you're like, okay, what's going on? And then all of a sudden now you're in a different time frame, and you're starting to learn, how we got there, and it's in black and white. And I was just like, oh, this is freaking just too awesome. And it felt very much beautiful. Like Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad story structure would often be like that. They would show you this kind of shitstorm that you're in, and then come back and show you how we got there.
Good point.
Yeah, and I loved that. So I loved the humor too. One of the things you didn't mention that I'll add is when Morgan sees right through Carol and her charade. I thought that was, and of course.
I'm going to talk a little more about that too, but yeah, that was perfect.
Yeah, and obviously that was foreshadowing of the next week's episode, but also just really funny. I thought it was really good how Rick put him in the cell at night. I thought that was very realistic. I thought that was there were a lot of little things like that. And then again, Morgan references the cell when he says, well, he was bad. We had to kill him or whatever when they're taking the body away. And Morgan's like, well, you do have a cell, because I know I'm in it,
right.
So and I think that a lot of people wondered about that last season. I know I did. Why did they have to kill him? Why can't they, lock this guy up if he's a threat? You know what I mean? And Morgan basically then was kind of making that same point. And there was a lot of little things like that they did throughout the episode that helped tie up little loose ends from last season. I love
here's kind of the other thing.
Go ahead. No, there's a little bit of a delay, so I
was just going to say, so here's the other thing about Pete, though. The main reason that they were holding on to Pete was because of his surgical skills. So how much participation do you think you're going to get out of somebody that you keep locked up in a cell?
Yeah, but still, the time to have locked him up would have been before he killed Reg. The time to,
absolutely.
That he was under house arrest, I guess, right? They put him in the house, and he wasn't supposed to come out, I think. So, but, they should have locked him up, but Rick wanted to kill him, and then of course the question is, did he want to kill him because he was such a threat, or did he want to kill him because he's kind of got this crazy fantasy that Jess and him can be together? You know what I mean? And he wants him out of the way.
I completely think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I agree.
I completely, but I also think that Pete's personality was such that if they had said, okay, well, we're going to lock you up to keep us safe from you, but by the way, when we have an emergency, we're going to pull you out and make you operate.
No,
No
I don't
way.
think they would have done that. I don't think they would have done that. Well, that certainly wouldn't have worked. I agree with you on that, But yeah, and I like the fact, and again, we'll talk about it when we talk about our JSS episode, but they kind of come back to that whole Rick wanting to be with Jess thing in that episode, and she just sets his ass straight.
Right.
But
Right.
I love the hint of the backstory on Morgan, with the who taught him the stick and all of his Zen-like attitude. I like that we see where we see the shot of the map. We also see the cover of The Art of Peace, which is a book by the creator of Aikido.
Right.
Which explains why he's all into the staff and everything. So that was kind of cool. It added a lot of mystery to that character. And of course, the throwback to the premiere episode when Rick says to him, I ask, you answer. It's common courtesy, right?
Yeah, that was definitely on my list of shout outs.
Yeah, I mean, that's right back to what he said to him when Rick was in the bed, in his house, and he'd just taken him in.
Yeah, he's completely turning it around. I mean, you're exactly right. He's quoting Morgan back to Morgan.
Well, they're really kind of they're opposite. They're at opposite ends now. The first time they met, they were.
Yes.
Morgan was where Rick is. And Rick was more where Morgan is, and now they've completely switched. So that was just another nice way to demonstrate that. I loved Again, the filming of the episode, the way they shot the scene where Rick and Morgan are putting the body in the trunk, you're seeing it from the point of view of the trunk. So you're almost inside the trunk. You know what I mean? And that was really cool. Also a creative tip of the hat to movies of the past, like Pulp Fiction has a scene with like that, as well as I believe there's one or two times that's in Breaking Bad. They do that kind of shot. And then when line, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say also a little nod to Glenn and Maggie finding that walker in a trunk last season. The one who looked so much like Beth.
Oh yeah, excellent. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. You're right. That's an excellent observation. And then of course the line was fantastic. I'm a killer, Rick, and so are you. Because he says, that Pete was a killer or whatever. He says, I'm a killer, and so are you. Just fantastic.
I loved that he acknowledged that, because I think it took him. I think it was a place of peace, but I also think it was a difficult place for him to acknowledge that. So that was a really deep moment for that character, I think.
Yeah, I think it was Morgan's way of saying to Rick, listen, you can't. The old way of judging people has to change, because
Exactly.
the moral code has got to change to adjust to the times, and you can't just say that all people that kill are bad people now. Whereas in our current society, that's a fair thing to say, I think. But in that world, you have to kill to survive, and so it becomes much more nuanced. Why did you kill and who did you kill, and kind of coming back to those questions, have you killed and why did you kill, and have you killed a person, have you killed a walker? You remember the three questions,
Exactly.
That shot of Daryl leading the zombie pile or the zombie horde on the bike, freaking unbelievable.
Yeah.
And just puts to shame the Fear of Walking Dead's Daniel Pied Piper. You know what I mean? Remember in Fear the Walking Dead when the
I'm trying
Daniel's
so hard to
Daniel's bringing the horde of zombies to the base, and it just didn't come off in my mind the way and then you got this in contrast.
I'm trying so hard to like Fear and trying so hard to give it a chance, but I agree.
Well, I mean, it's got to have some time to get its sea legs. I think they've got budgetary
It
constraints,
does.
and I think that all shows start off with trying to find their mojo. So I'm sure they'll nail it. Let's see. I thought the sound and music played kind of a bigger role in this episode. I think it was to try and gin up the Walker herd's sense of size and scope. You know what I mean? It was really edgy music and piercing and unnerving whenever the herd was on the
I'm going
screen.
to talk about that a little in my bad too, so I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay. We talked about Heath and Eugene at the gate. Freaking hilarious.
Yes.
I liked that Rick is a little unhinged, and he's being a bit of a jerk, I loved how, and I mentioned before, how Jesse puts him in his place. You won't be teaching us how to shoot, and don't touch or lecture my son again. It's like she's getting tougher, and then of course I'm going to fight was a little bit of a foreshadowing to this week's episode, or to JSS. So I liked that. We talked about the Heath intro. I thought, again, also the writing, the Heath was the perfect example. You totally felt like this guy was part of the crew from the beginning. But the same thing for Carter. That was his first episode.
Right.
And yet by the time...
And only, unfortunately.
Yeah. He was great. But, and it was really cool because it was kind of like... He was kind of like what Rick would be like if Rick had been behind those walls all that time. You know what I mean? Just it's a nice contrast, So I was just impressed, both with the actor and the writing, and how they made you, I wouldn't say care about the guy, but feel like he was a part of the team and had been there for a long time. Let's see.
Well, I saw another comment somewhere about Carter, and someone made the point that any one of us would have said, no, go through this plan again from the beginning.
Yes, yeah.
And that was a very rational response,
Absolutely. And to be honest...
So, yeah,
the plan was a stupid plan.
As demonstrated in JSS, and we think thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
just, they had... granted, it all kind of goes sideways when that truck falls off the side, but they didn't know that was going to happen right then. But I mean, the idea of reinforcing the blockades, and then maybe they had time. Time was on their side. I mean, they were trying to imply that time wasn't on their side because those trucks weren't going to be able to stay there long, and of course that is what happens. But I think the rational point of view would have been, let's try to take advantage of the fact that they're so locked into this cage. Let's burn them or something, you know what I mean, or come up with a way to let them out slowly, and over a month's time wipe them out, you know what I mean, as opposed to what they came up with. I mean, talk about risky.
Right.
But it certainly made for a much more dramatic episode.
And when you think about the moment in front of the tractor store with Glenn, Nicholas, and Heath, they're kind of demonstrating the way it could have been handled, right?
Right.
I mean, on a very small scale, they're kind of demonstrating how maybe it should have been looked at.
Right. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point. Yeah. Well, they kind of try to do it, and then it backfires, and they have to go out the window, and then that kind of blows up a little bit in their face too. But but yes, it was the idea of doing a controlled slaughter, as opposed to a freaking zombie parade through town.
And it did manage to be controlled, even with it being a little bit problematic. They had better control than they would have. Right.
But if that number had been more,
so
that would not have ended.
Sure.
So what do you think Maggie's pregnant?
So any more goods?
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. I'm just
I
getting
don't
started.
know. I think she's I think she's awfully soft right now, and I don't know if it's because she's taking on part of her dad's persona. I don't know if she's hormonal, but I think that we definitely seen some big changes in Maggie. I was just looking at the evolution in all of the characters, and it's pretty incredible when you think about where they all started. They're all very different.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think when Glenn turns to her in the meeting and says, you should stay and take care of Deanna, and she's like, well, I want to help, and he's like, yeah, but this place needs Diana now, and we need her to be strong and to get back on board, even though she's lost Reg, and you need to make that happen. And she's like, okay, you're right, I'll do that, but that's not the only reason you want me to stay. And he's like, no, you're right, it's not. And the implication, I think, is that maybe, she's pregnant.
I have to tell you, I missed that completely, even on the rewatch. I mean, I saw the part about the conversation about Deanna, but I missed that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think,
Good.
and then a lot of people were talking about that online too. So I think that's, at least they're trying to insinuate that it may or may not happen. And they were talking about it at one
Well,
point
there
at the prison, right?
and there does seem to be a shortage of reliable birth control in the zombie apocalypse. So,
Well, that and the fact that I think if the human species is going to continue, people have to have babies.
right.
That you scene with Eugene in the pantry was freaking classic. I
He
mean,
was just kind of everywhere on this
I thought he
episode,
was
which was really enjoyable.
I thought he was going to get shot. I thought this was it. I thought he was going to get shot, and that's how he's going to die. But the only thing I didn't like, and I should have put it in my bad. Oh yeah, no, I did. So I'll wait on that. Love the return of the balloons.
Okay. Yes, I thought that was a nice callback to those walkers that were distracted by that balloon.
Yeah,
What was that, season 4?
No, I'm talking the balloon. Remember how they had the balloons in last season when
Oh,
Rick
right, with
is
the
losing
little
himself?
kid.
Right, the red balloon goes flying up and everything.
Yeah.
But that was kind of funny. And then I liked, again, some of the loose ends that were
But
tied
there
up.
was also that one that there was also though that cold open with the zombies reaching up for it and trying to get the balloon.
Right.
It was quite a while ago, so I don't know if that was the origin of the idea, but it was interesting.
Yeah, they like to use balloons.
There you go.
Tara
They're a
waking
cheap
up.
prop.
Tara waking up and then getting updated on Glenn and his nemesis and stuff. I thought that was, a nice way to do how they did that. Again, some of the writing was just, how do we
Okay.
reintroduce things? How do we get things back on with people without having to spend oodles of precious screen time explaining, you know what I mean? And I thought that was great.
That's going to be on my bads too, though.
Okay.
I
Abraham.
have a reason. You'll know.
I'm sure. Of course. Abraham, I thought character development was awesome. It seems like,
I agree.
yeah, it seems like, he's starting to miss his wife and his family again. They're not in crisis mode now. It seems like with Abraham, he has to have a mission. And once the mission is kind of done, then he starts to wallow a little bit and starts to fall apart. And it seems like he's getting a little reckless. I thought that was really well done and well shown, and also makes me nervous for him in terms of the future.
I agree. And Rosita talks at some point, and I can't remember if it's this episode or next episode because they blur together a little bit. But she talks about Abraham being part of her meaning, and I don't see that in him.
Right.
I don't see him having that strong link to Rosita. So
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree. I think he's getting really reckless and drinking a lot.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, and it seems like they're also trying to show us through the whole exchange with Sasha that he's starting to identify with the way that Sasha was becoming very reckless and jeopardizing herself. What's the word? What's the term I want?
Oh man, you're asking the person who's still doing word search after falling off her horse.
Well, she's.
I don't know. The thing is that go ahead. She's self-destructive
Self-destructive. That's what I was looking
to a
for.
certain
Thank you.
degree. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I think that she's finally kind of started to get back on track, and now he's kind of fallen off the wagon, and he's kind of trying to identify with her, and there are two ships kind of passing in the night, I think. So that's not going to help him, I don't think, too much.
And not to be too much of a shipper, but I kind of wonder if they're not setting them up for some kind of connection as well.
Well, I think that's been going on for a little while. To me, I remember it sticking out for me in the episode Them, when they're on the long trek on the road and they have the battle on the little bridge.
Right.
And, he starts to talk to her at that point in a way that was very, as if he was very concerned about her. And, I kind of said, well, maybe something's happening there. But we'll see, because it just seems like now they're, once again, at different ends of the spectrum,
Right.
We talked about the Daryl Rick conflict. We talked about the peanut butter bar. That was one of my favorites. That's it. Those were all my goods.
All right. So now on to the bad. So I've got to tell you, and I think we both agree on this one, I just wanted to peel those steri strips off Rick's face so bad. And the little Band-Aids.
I love
And you
them.
notice that they were like at different points, though, they were like different numbers of steri strips. There was never a consistent number of steri strips.
Yeah.
It was kind of maddening, and the nurse in me just wanted to like walk up and peel them away.
Yeah, I think that's what was probably going on, because that's your background, that just seemed like unrealistic and not correct. But from a comic reader, from a comic reader fan, that is so classic to the way he was portrayed.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So it was great. I loved seeing that.
I agree. And I'm up through, I'm kind of well into Alexandria and pretty much through, I think, the bulk of the Alexandria story, but I really need to get caught up on the book. So that's definitely on my list of to-dos. So another thing that really, really was a big bad for me, I just can't believe that the handful of walkers at that tractor store were really enough to make enough noise to drown out the herd and distract the herd. That really bothered me.
Well, I think it was more, they just needed another action sequence and opportunity to show Glenn and Nicholas's relationship,
I agree.
And yeah.
It just wasn't realistic in terms of why they felt like they needed to take them out, and them being a really good distraction or pull for that main herd of walkers, because that herd was huge.
Right.
And Nicholas himself said, "Oh, there's about a dozen in there," when he was talking about that store.
Right.
So I just didn't buy that.
Yeah. Plus, I would think that this all seemed to be taking place in a fairly large radius of area.
Right.
And they were out walking this thing. And it seems like, why would you walk all the way to there, describe to everybody what's got to be done, and then say, okay, we're going to come back tomorrow and you're here. You got all these people. Let's get this done.
Right. How about clear it now so it's even less of a distraction? Good
exactly.
point.
Let's just get it done.
Yeah.
But, again, it's like the idea of, burning them while they're in the pit versus, sending them on a parade through town. It's much more dramatic. So, yeah, I agree on that in terms of how they chose to take out the walkers at the tractor store.
Yeah.
Was there another bad? Did you have other bads?
Yeah, I had a few other bads, of course.
Okay, go ahead.
So I actually, as much as I enjoyed Rick shooting Gabriel down the first time, I kind of felt like we got the point the first time. Lyle Lovett has this really funny called "Once Is Enough," or really funny song called "Once Is Enough," and that's kind of what kept going through my head. I'm like, I get it, Rick. You don't need to replay that scene again and again.
You mean when he tells him no?
Yeah,
when he
like
offers to help.
Like every time Gabriel shoots up his hand, he's like, "I'll help," and Rick's like, "No."
Right.
And he just did it several times, and I thought that all of us are smart enough viewers that once would have been fine.
Huh. I liked that scene. I liked it. Also, I think kind of set up some thought, some imagery in your head that maybe he might have something to do with the way that the episode ends. You know what I mean? Because they showed some attention. You know what I mean? There was this kind of like, maybe he's pissed off that he's being neglected, so he's going to screw things up type of thing. You know what I mean?
Well, that's definitely behavior that I could see Gabriel engaging in, despite his collar and black cloth. So.
Yeah, which seems to have no purpose for him at all. If you ask me. What else?
Let's see. I question Rick's decision to dump his body. And ultimately, I know they did bury the body, but I get it in terms of that being a bad impact on his relationship with Jesse and just really losing Ron altogether. Yeah. And I think it also just really shows us that contrast in how different Rick is, because I was watching the pilot the other night. Just remember his kind words to Bicycle Girl before he puts her out of her misery. And now he's like, we're not burying killers inside the gates. Dump this body.
You don't even need to go back as far as the premiere or the first episode. You could go back to last season and Four Walls and a Roof.
Right.
When they kill the termites.
Right.
And then the next morning he's out front burying them.
Which I don't think you would see that behavior now.
No, but I think that was the point, that Rick has started to get too far off the wagon. He's starting to really start to lose it and become too brutal and too uncaring. And Morgan, is kind of trying to bring him back on,
Right.
What else?
So this is one of my big, big griefs. And it's because I had my own experience with a head injury this summer. But Tara's miraculous recovery from her head injury.
Yeah.
I mean, she was on death's door. And I've got to tell you, I was unconscious for, we think, a total of 15 minutes. Spent some time in the ER, spent some time in the ICU, and had a couple of head CTs. And I'm still working on some recovery stuff from my brain injury. So Tara, with no technology, or little technology, wakes up and has this miraculous recovery from her TBI.
Well, she's still getting headaches and dizziness.
Well, okay, so I'm here to tell you that I'm like 3 months out and I'm still getting headaches and dizziness. Right. So it just it bothered me a little bit from the perspective of someone who's experienced it and just how they kind of brushed over it. And I know you can't be perfect and you can't portray all of that stuff perfectly, but there's no way someone with an injury that serious is going to recover that quickly and that completely.
Right.
So hopefully I know that they did in JSS do some work with trying to talk a little bit more about her recovery, and I'm hoping that they go back to that.
Yeah. No, I can totally understand that. Anything else?
So we already talked about the incompetence of the people of Alexandria when faced with the walkers at building the wall. So I think that's good for my formal bads. Like I said, I have a lot of notes, but It's your turn.
Well, I have almost nothing in the bads. The only really, really bad that stuck out to me was the entry of Rick and the crew right when Carter was getting ready to shoot Eugene. It just was a little too convenient.
The timing was perfect. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with all your points as well. Like the tractor store. Is that really going to be necessary to do that? Is it really necessary? I don't think so, but I can go with it. And plus, it allowed for a great opportunity to show Nicholas and Glenn. And and I agree with you on the head injury. But at the same time, for the sake of the story and movement and everything else. But this to me stood out as just way too convenient.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I understood it, but at the same time, it just was just too unbelievable. That was really the only one that bothered me. I mean, I was disappointed that we didn't get any Aaron in this episode.
Right.
And I didn't like that, but I think it wasn't that it was a bad thing of the episode, but I didn't like the fact that he wanted to bury Pete, a few miles out and not burying him in the community. I think it was petty and, just incredibly cruel to Pete's children,
right.
who are innocents in this situation and in fact victims.
And really and honestly to Jesse too, because
right.
as much as her relationship with Pete was horrible, she was still married to him and she's still going to grieve.
Well, yeah, and it's the father of her children,
right?
And so that to me, but I don't know if I'd say it quantify it as a bad aspect of the show, because I think it's a bad aspect of the character. It's a horrible aspect of the character of Rick at this point and where he is in his mindset right now. But that's not a bad thing in terms of being critical of the show.
Good point. I mean, it really does just tell us more about Rick.
Right. What about your uglies?
Well, so one of my best uglies, and I'm sure that everybody else feels this way too, but that walker who just peeled his skin off coming between the trailers, that was pretty nice.
That was pretty wild.
Yeah. And I have to say, Denai Guerrero's arms, holy shit, that woman's got some guns. So yeah, that's definitely a good ugly.
Yep.
I liked just, again, looking at the evolution of Glenn, and one of the callbacks that he made was, hey, man, I should be delivering pizzas.
Yeah, again, more of that fantastic Scott Gimple humor.
Yeah, and just to think about, again, how soft and sweet Glenn was in that first episode or first season, and now to look at how he's still got that core of sweetness, but he's really got a tough exterior shell.
Right.
And I just like seeing that. I think it's very real.
Yep. I mean, if you think about it, that's really the case for all of the people surrounding Rick.
I agree.
What I mean?
I agree completely.
They're all hardened warriors that at their core still are very human and sensitive,
Yep.
No, I agree.
And I think honestly most of my uglies were good uglies, like Tara's reference to Noah when she first woke up.
Yeah,
that was heartbreaking, man.
Yeah.
A drunken Abraham, again, we talked about him, but I just really thought that the way that they played him was really in character, and they're doing a nice job kind of bringing his character along as well.
Yep.
And then Carol, of course, so innocent, so sweet.
Right.
So full of it.
So full of it. Yeah, exactly.
And then I think one of my favorite moments in the whole show this time was when Rick invited Morgan to move in with them and then offered to let him hold Judith.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a really sweet moment, and we really do need those moments to lighten up all of the horrible things.
Absolutely. And I think it also it was the way that the episode showed that these two have reached a mutual understanding and gotten past the two different philosophies and recognized that, they do care about each other and that they do trust each other.
Yeah.
I can tell you there's no greater example of trust than, letting him hold his child,
I bet.
Yeah. So, I think that, my uglies were I was basically two or three different things. One was Morgan's overall performance, Lenny James' overall performance as Morgan. I just think, anytime that guy's on the screen, I'm captivated.
I agree.
And it's always been the case, right up from the first episode to Clear and now these episodes. The second is the time jump story format with the black and white color visuals. The whole Breaking Bad, opening sequence that then has to be explained, the time jumping. I just loved it. I just absolutely loved when the way that they're telling a story is being done in this just a creative way, as opposed to just linear way. So that to me was the biggest ugly of the episode, again, being a good ugly. And of course the horn ending was just,
right.
It was just a perfect, and the reason is because they built it up so that you really thought that what was going to happen was that this Carter character was going to bring this whole thing down around everybody.
Right.
And that they made it, they really led you down that path. And then, sure enough, he gets bit in the face and he's screaming and the walkers start going off track. And you're like, oh, it's going the way that, it seemed like it was going, a little bit predictable, but what the hell? Here we go. You know what I mean? And then Rick freaking silences him, which was pretty intense. You know what I mean?
And what was the look between Michonne and Morgan? Was it acceptance? Was it?
Yeah. I'll tell you my thoughts on that in a second.
Okay.
Then he silences them, and then they start using the gunfire, and they get them all back on track.
Right.
And then you're like, holy shit, this is actually gonna.
They're
happen.
Gonna make it work.
This is gonna work, and it's not gonna be this guy Carter who brings this down. And then the horn starts. And it was like a hammer in the head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And probably one of the most telling scenes for me, or dialogue for me, was when Michonne and him are like, where's it coming from? Where's it coming from? It sounds like it's coming from, says Michonne. And Rick says, home.
Oh.
And that's the first time that we've ever heard him refer to any place that they've been to as home.
God, I missed that too.
Yeah, and that to me was more heart-wrenching, more telling, and also explains a lot of his desperate kind. He's almost desperate right now. You know what I mean?
To keep it together.
Yeah, to keep it together, to make it work, to save this place, to protect everybody, to get rid of any threats, and you can see now why, because he's emotionally starting to see this as his home. And that was just, to me, tremendous. And that horn, and then the cut to black.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
yes.
Oh my God, that was just fantastic filmmaking. Just classic filmmaking. You know what I mean? So
that was absolutely visually beautiful to have it just be black with the horn blaring. Yeah. And
in reference to your question, I think it was. I think it was a sad acceptance of the fact that this is what the world they live in now, that sometimes this is what's going to have to happen and this is what has to be done. And it's a horrible, horrible thing. But it is a sad reality, And
they had that conversation around that. It's just that there was a moment where they almost looked, especially Morgan, looked at Rick with disbelief or with horror, thinking, did you really have to do that?
Right. Well, I think there's Morgan's idea that, should always try to preserve life.
Right.
Then there is Rick, Rick and kind of Carol, which is, the only lives you have to worry about preserving are your own and those you love.
Right.
And then there's the middle. And the middle was kind of, I think, where you take life when you have to, but you regret it. And you feel remorse about it, and you don't like it.
And I think that's Michonne.
And that's Michonne, and Morgan's trying to get there. You know what I mean? Because when he was living on his own, he could live his own way. But when he's living with people he cares about, things start to change, and I think he's realizing that. But then, they explore that more in the next episode. But
so just some notes. So did you notice that Morgan had both the map and his rabbit's foot as talismans still?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
and I loved that because it really was for me a callback to Coda. And one of the things that I love about the piece of art that you did was the framing of his talismans in Coda. So that was super cool.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and this goes back to you talking about Morgan a few minutes ago, but there's just something about the way that Lenny James plays him. It's so deep. He's got this softness, this gentleness, this sweetness, but at the same time, you can see that underlying sadness and that depth in his character. And it's so striking. You are absolutely right. He's gripping every time he's on the screen.
Yeah. No, he is. He's amazing. He's just a fantastic actor. And who else used to do that to me was the actor that played Herschel.
Yes.
Whenever Herschel would speak, I found myself being captivated by him and in a similar fashion, So, I agree. He's the best thing on the show. So I hope he lasts, but I don't know. I don't know how long that's going to be.
Yeah. So I have some observations about that when we talk about JSS.
All right. I think for time's sake,
we should probably bust into that.
Yeah, we should go into that. And also, I think, I apologize to listeners. We had hoped to read some of the comments and letters and things about the premiere that people wrote in. I think we're going to have to skip over that and just jump right to the next episode and then try to wrap up because it's involved trying to do 2 episodes in one.
Especially when you have 2 people who love to hear themselves talk. Okay, so we're going to move on to JSS, which I had someone guess it was Just Stay Still. And I'm wondering, before the reveal of the title, if you had any other good feedback from people about what they thought JSS stood for.
Yeah, the only one I think I saw that made any sense to me was you're saying the Just Stay Still, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which was something that the Wolves were saying to Morgan, right? When they,
right.
Yeah. Well, and that has not necessarily been completely disproved. I mean, we know literally what she was saying, but that doesn't mean that JSS doesn't also stand for that if her relationship with the Wolves turns out to be more involved.
Which there's certainly some discussion around that, isn't there?
Yes. Yeah, I assume we'll get into that.
Oh, yeah.
What were the numbers on JSS?
So, when I went online and looked at the numbers, of course, there was the typical, the numbers slid horribly in terms of
really?
But they didn't, actually. So when I looked at the numbers on Sunday were 12.12 million.
So that's just for Sunday night?
That's just for Sunday night, and it was up against Sunday Night Football, and it was also up against the baseball playoffs.
Oh, yeah. That's big.
And then when you look at...
And then the premiere was what for the kickoff? 15?
I want to say the premiere was 17.
17.
Yeah. But then when you look at Live Plus 3 for JSS, it's 17 million.
Right.
So it's still huge.
Right. And all the premieres always do better.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. And it didn't have quite the competition that this one did.
Right.
Okay, cool. So still doing good.
And so the director on this one was Jennifer Lynch, who did Spend.
Right, The Death of Noah.
Right.
Now she is the daughter
of David Lynch.
Of David Lynch, right? Yeah.
Correct.
And I thought Spend was a fantastic episode.
I did too, and I think she's got her dad's darkness.
Yeah, and she did a great job with this one. Probably, in my opinion, better in this than even Spend.
And I actually rated this one a little bit higher than I did the season opener even.
Ah, okay.
Did you?
I would say I like them about equal. I think the premiere just had so much more over the top, with the quarry and all that, so that just, and the whole time jump and the color changing of flashbacks and stuff. So I think I'd have to rate that a little higher, but this was a fantastic episode also.
So I gave it 4.9 perfectly cooked casseroles.
I'm going to give it 4.8 dried turtle bones. How about that?
And I gotta tell you, I'm not blowing smoke, but I think in the tribute piece for this, you got Enid's face so perfect.
Thank you.
Oh my God, it's just great. I love it.
Some things I realize now I left out. I wanted, like the one for the premiere had so much in it, and sometimes I get caught up in trying to put in as much as possible, from the episode, but then that can often distract from the composition. You know what I mean?
Right.
You kind of have to sometimes pick and choose, and I was trying to push myself to make this one a little bit simpler and a little bit more graphic, and so I focused on the main key points. But in hindsight, I wish I had just put in a pack of cigarettes and a block of cheese.
The cheese thing, I'm still not quite sure about the whole cheese thing.
Yeah, cheese maker. I wanted to also point out that this episode was written by Seth Hoffman, and Seth wrote Conquer, which was the season finale. He wrote The Distance, which was one of my favorite episodes from last season, where they make the big run in the car, heading to Alexandria.
That's the one with the flare walker, right?
The flare and the eye walker.
Yeah.
Crossed, he wrote, which is the great episode where they, just before they take the hospital, where they meet, or they have the melted walkers in the street, or Self-Help, which is the Abraham episode.
I love that.
Yep. Us, and then Claimed.
That was a great episode.
Yeah, it was a great episode too. So he's written quite a few really good, strong episodes, and this is just another star in his cap, if you ask me.
Well, and he's got some good cred. I mean, he wrote for House. I can't remember. I looked up a couple of other things. I'm going to show some of my ignorance. He wrote several episodes for Flash Forward, which I'm not sure what that...
Oh, I loved Flash Forward. You didn't Flash Forward was awesome.
So I got to tell you, live in rural Alaska, don't have satellite or cable. Because we got scouted for a satellite dish, and we couldn't make it work on our property. So,
oh man, that sucks.
It does suck. So I'm pretty much dependent on the kindness of others and Netflix and Amazon at this point.
Right. I think the Flash Forward might be on Netflix. I don't know. You should check.
I was going to say I'll have to look for it then.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's a frustrating watch because by the time it starts to really crank up and get going really good, the season ended and then it wasn't renewed.
I hate that.
So you're left with this big cliffhanger kind of hanging, and you're never going to find out. So it was all based on a book, so you could read the book instead. I've heard the book is just as good, if not better, actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's a really. Do you know the concept?
I don't.
It's cool. It was basically there's a 20-minute period of time where everybody on the entire planet blacks out for 20 minutes. Yeah, there's a complete blackout. And during that blackout, the majority of people have a flash forward experience where 15 years in the future, they're all of a sudden transported 15 years in the future. And they see all sorts of things about their life and the world 15 years in the future. And then they woke up, and having been out for 20 minutes or whatever. Some people didn't experience anything. But the majority of people saw signs from the future. And then it's all about trying to figure out what happened, why it happened, who did it, if it was done by somebody, what the flash forwards mean, and then parts of the realities of the future that they saw start to come true. And, is it preordained? Can they change it? Can they change what they saw happen? All this stuff. And it was cool.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, it was. It was cool. So I'll start off this time on the goods.
All right, you go for it.
The time jump opening, again, we talked about it a lot when we talked about the premiere. For me, it seems to me like, I don't want to say pointless, but so two-dimensional to take film and just point the camera and tell a story from beginning to end in a linear fashion. Mm-hmm. And the show is really starting to play with time. And I love that. I love that this episode takes place pretty much just before the end of the last episode. It builds up to and then gets to the point where that episode was when the horn, and then moves forward into the future. And I love that. I love jumping back to see about Enid's origin.
I agree.
I think that was great because, she's been kind of somebody that totally undeveloped, but a good mystery. It was also, even within that sequence, the opening sequence, there was great time jumping that just helped create better horror. We see the zombies coming from the front. She starts to, express concern. The parents' responses, are kind of lame, and, we're getting to it. Don't worry, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And then we cut to seeing her in the car, obviously in the future, blood covered, parents dead, zombies eating. We don't have to see it happen. You know what I mean? It was like Hitchcock, it's more terrifying if we see in our mind what happened. So that was just, that was awesome. I loved that. I thought she looked really pretty crazy in the wild, animal-like, almost feral. The turtle eating, both kind of made her look crazy, and for me echoed the termites / cannibals. This idea that she was starting to go off the rails and capable of being, like an animal. And of course, the wolves are those kinds of people.
I was going to say that may play into some of the theories about her character.
But you have to be cautious because, it just seems like the show likes to tease us, likes to say, hey, we're going this way, kind of like what we talked about with Carter being the source of the reason that the plan doesn't work with the zombie parade, but then that turns out not to be what happens, So they do that sometimes, but they definitely seem like they're trying to say for the period of time she was out in the wild, she, was nuts and could become one of the wolves. I think, she still could be a wolf. It was interesting that she had all the keys. I thought that was pretty cool. Maybe she let them in. But again, maybe that's just them trying to lead us in a certain direction with her.
Well, one of the things about people with post-traumatic stress is they control as much as they can.
Oh, yeah, it's a good point.
So maybe for her, part of her manifestation of her PTSD is just having control by having those keys. If I remember right, she said something to that effect.
She said, I didn't want them to get them. Which
leads to the wolf theory too.
Well, it leads you to think that maybe she wasn't, that she was trying to protect everybody, or by keeping the key. But it was also just kind of weird that she would have all these keys.
Right.
But that's a good point, because maybe she had them because she wanted to make sure she had access to everything. Mm-hmm. Because she just didn't want to be dependent on anybody else. But then everyone's been obsessing about this line where she says right at that point in the episode, she says, the place is too big to defend.
Right.
And that's how and then he cuts her off and interrupts her and says, you're going I'm not letting anybody in here, and doesn't let her finish that sentence. But the idea that she was kind of saying that's how we got in here.
And, I thought he had a little bit of a Rick moment, a dictatorship moment, by cutting her off and not letting her finish and not hearing her.
Well, he didn't want to hear her because
he didn't want her to go.
Right, exactly. It became clear she was there to say goodbye, and he didn't want to hear that. So he was ignoring it and kind of using the situation to, avoid that. So I would agree with you on that. I don't know what that thing was about her saying that's how we, I don't know how do you take that? Do you think that that's just more of them trying to disinformation us or mislead us? Or do you think that she's saying that, she's a wolf?
I don't know, because the actress was on The Talking Dead.
Yeah.
And they asked her point blank if she was going to be back. And she
Right.
kind of gave this hedgy answer that made it sound like she was going to be back and it was going to be surprising. But we also know that they are totally good at leading us down the wrong path.
Right.
So I think it could go either way. I'm not entirely convinced she's a wolf, but I'm also not convinced we've seen the last of Enid.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
I think she's a survivor,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, JSS, right?
Right.
I think, she says also when he's talking about the wolves, and she says, they're just people.
Yes, that is exactly it. And I
And I thought
think,
that was kind of interesting too, because it's almost as if she identified with them, you know?
and it also makes you feel like she knows something about them.
Right. So, something is up with her. We don't know the story on her yet. We don't know what the deal is with her yet. I don't think she's tied with the wolves directly, but maybe she is aware of them, maybe in her circles outside. Maybe that's what's going on. I don't know. And it's interesting, too, because I think there's the possibility that we're seeing, I don't want to spoil the comic for people, but there's a storyline in the comic. How far are you up in the comic?
I'm through the human beings coming into Alexandria. Not to put too fine a spoiler on it. I'm at the point where the world expands a little bit beyond Alexandria, but I'm not much
Oh, okay.
further.
Oh, my
I'm
gosh.
not much
Okay,
further
so
than that.
you're not up through the Whisperers or any of that yet.
I know some of the Whisperer's story, but I don't know tons of it.
Well, there's a plot line, and I don't want to spoil too much. So if you're a reader and you don't want to be spoiled by potential spoilers for the comic, you should jump ahead.
Yeah,
Five, four,
couple
three,
minutes.
two.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, jump. Okay, so there's a storyline where, I'll try to be vague too for you so that you don't spoil you, but Carl develops a relationship with a character that is tied to the Whisperers.
So I've heard about some of this because I've listened to Mr. Blog and Gracie. So,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And they're always kind of rearranging things in the TV version, from the comics, so that the comic readers are getting things kind of fresh.
Right. So this could very well be the start of the Whisperers.
Well, it could be the start of the Whisperers, or it could be that they're taking the way that they handle this relationship that Carl has with this person
Right.
in the future, and pulling her out of that story and putting it in this story.
Good point.
You know what I mean? So she may have a relationship with someone, either the Wolves or with another group, like maybe Negan's group, that is coming up, and that they're going to start exploring that relationship now instead of waiting to do it down when the Whisperers come into the TV show.
That is a really good point.
Yeah, so that's a lot of people are theorizing that.
And I am up through Negan's introduction, so not that we have to spoil that.
Right. I thought it was also interesting, and again, more great creative use of time. We see her find Alexandria.
I'm glad you brought that up because I thought it was so interesting that she was not found. She found Alexandria. She wasn't
Right.
pulled in.
And the way it's cut, though, you don't know exactly what the time frame is.
Yes.
She comes across it. She seems, like almost a little bit threatened by it, or nervous about it, and uncomfortable about it. And she turns away from it. And you've got the sun coming up over her head and over Alexandria, as if, here's sunshine, here's a new day. And she's kind of turning her back on it. And she writes her JSS on her hand. And then they cut to the gate opening, and there she is, and she decides to come in. The only thing that puts in the timing is the JSS is still on her hand, but you don't know, if that means that she chose right at that moment to do that, or if she then came back later.
So the other thing I want to point out about that scene, do you realize what drew her back?
She's writing on her hand. She's got her back to them, and she's writing on her hand the JSS.
I'm kind of setting you up here, but
yeah, I know. I guess the answer is I don't. Other than the fact that she's just survived somehow, and maybe the realization that this would be a way to survive.
She hears children playing.
Yeah, she
which
hears
is the sound that Rick said he was going to be listening for.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. No, I think that's a good observation. Let's see. I thought the whole wolves attack being done in real time, which starts when Carol sets the timer and ends when the timer rings, is freaking fantastic. Again, more creative use of, a great, fantastic creative choice.
And the timer's a shout out to Enid.
Why is that a shout out to Enid?
To Enid, because she uses those timers to distract walkers when she's out beyond the gates.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. That's a great observation. Yeah, no, that's cool. Wow, man. Just when you realize stuff like that, I would love to be a fly on the wall in the writer's room for these shows. You know what I mean? Because just think of how they that's not a coincidence. It can't be, right?
Right. The intricacy is amazing.
It is. It's unbelievable.
And I don't think anything is a coincidence when you're looking at a series this complicated.
Right. For me, and again, this is under my goods, I saw this episode as kind of looking at three different points of view. You had Morgan's point of view, which is all life is precious and must be preserved.
Right.
We must keep our humanity at all times. And then you had Carol's.
Yes.
Only the lives of those that we care about in ourselves are precious. All other life is expendable. And then, which has some humanity in it, but a lot of sacrificing too. And then Enid's, which is more basic, instinctual, just survive somehow, which, is also symbolized by the turtle eating and her leaving when it gets tough in order to ensure self-preservation.
Right.
And I got thinking about that a little bit more. And, I wonder if this isn't a little bit of a metaphor for the three characters and their positions, kind of a metaphor for Freud's human psyche model.
Perfect.
Of the id, the ego, and the superego. With Enid representing the id, which is kind of our basic animal instinctual drive to survive, and then Carol's being the ego, which is regulating the id's drive in a kind of realistic way that will benefit the long term and allow it to
the
function.
thing that kind of holds us together in society.
Right, exactly. And then Morgan as the superego, which reflects kind of the internalization of cultural rules and what we call, a conscience.
So now you have to come back because it's so rare to meet another Freudian.
Yeah, I'm not a young guy. I'm definitely a Freudian guy.
I think I'm a reformed Freudian because you're not supposed to be a feminist and like Freud, but I think Freud had some good points.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to take all of it.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean all of it's bad, but not all of it's good too. But that was kind of cool, and I think that may be something they're hitting at a little bit. And I think the wolves kind of represent, what happens when the ego and the superego are not there.
And I'm glad you brought them in because one of the things that bothered me, and this was it wasn't really good, bad, or ugly. It was just in my notes, but the wolves were so brutal. They were so atavistic. Their kill was overkill. They didn't just kill people to take over the space. They dismembered people. They brutally, brutally killed people.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting visual and just an interesting commentary on who those characters are.
Right. There's something that now maybe it's so obvious that no one's talking about it. So this is not going to be some great insight. And I'm going to be like, oh, listen to this great insight. And everybody's going to be like, that was so freaking obvious, Kirk. But there was something that never went explained in last season that this episode explained.
Okay, tell me, because I'm not sure I see it, even though it's obvious.
In the episode, the opening episode of the second half of season 5, the episode where Tyrese dies. I've forgotten the name of it. What's going on? What's happening? What's going on?
Yes.
And they go to Noah's old home.
And all of those people were dismembered.
They had the truckload of corpses with the arms, legs cut off, and the bodies cut in half, and they never understood what that was, and it was never explained. And we assumed it was the wolves, but we never understood what that was about. And now we know. They chop them up. They chop the people up. They take off their arms, their legs. They cut them in half, and that's why we've found those before. And I just thought that was kind of cool that we kind of got that explained finally.
That's a really good catch. I totally missed it.
What else did I like here? At the end, both Carol and Morgan seem to realize that both their arguments have validity, and that the real world, you kind of need to balance both.
Right.
That I thought that was really powerful. Ultimately, Morgan ended up having to kill.
Yes.
And ultimately Carol felt guilt and remorse at having dealt out so much death. She was also clearly, sad about the fact that, this person that she liked, or that she also sent that woman outside, made her feel guilty about.
Right.
So she went out and ended up as a result getting killed. But, I think it was also just the idea of killing all these people and being so brutal just took its toll. You know what I mean?
And the fact that Morgan saw it and said, "You don't like this. This hurts you. This makes you sad."
That was a great line, and I didn't really pay attention to that line until my second viewing. And he's trying to get through to her, and she's not listening to him. And then he stops her and he says, Carol, you don't like this."
Yes.
And she kind of hears him. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I agree with you on that.
There was part of me that wanted to describe them as mirrors of each other, and then I realized that in some way they're really half of one person. They're each one half of one person.
Yeah, well, they're each half of the solution,
right?
Of how you survive. You've got to be brutal, and sometimes you got to kill, but you've got to hang on to your humanity. I mean, this has been kind of the theme for the show for quite a while now, but they definitely, I'm getting tired right here, but they embody those two philosophies. And Morgan's philosophy is not the answer. You know what I mean? Because left unchecked, his philosophy creates lots of threats too. I mean, he lets those wolves leave.
Right. This actually
live. He encourages them to live, to move on, and he tells them about the fact that they've got weapons. He allows them to take a gun.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, but in my mind, that's a mistake. I mean, he let those two guys live, and as a result, they went on in last season, and as a result, they went on to find the bag and find the way to Alexandria and kill all these people.
And that actually goes into my good, ugly, and I'm gonna say it now because it's
Go for it.
Your timing is perfect. It's just that every little action has repercussions. And Morgan letting those wolves go in the season finale and then letting more wolves go this time.
Right.
That's going to come back. That's going to come back and bite us. Yep,
absolutely. But I thought, just like his saying to Carol, you don't like this, when Morgan is confronted by the wolves and he says to them, if you stay, I guess he says it to that leader guy.
If you keep going,
stay on this path, you will die.
Yeah.
And in my mind, he's speaking to himself.
Yes, he is.
And he's trying, you can tell. And again, this is the tremendous actor that Lenny James is and his amazing performance in this. But he's on one hand, he's trying to help save this community, stop this attack. He's trying to stay true to his philosophy, not kill people, and it's all falling down around him, and he's going to have to kill people, and he's surrounded. When he's surrounded by these people, Carol's going to be there. She's going to be killing people. They don't have the same philosophy, and it's all throwing it in chaos in his mind. And you can kind of tell through that whole episode that he's really struggling internally with it. And I think when he says that to that guy, he's not really saying it for that guy. He's saying it for himself. He's saying, if I stay here, if I choose to live with these people and then have to kill sometimes, I'm going to die. I'm going to die inside. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's why I was really upset at the end when he's walking away with his little cheese bag, his little bag of cheese, which I have to give props to listener Thomas, who goes
Reese.
by.
I think Thomas Reese, right?
No, I've forgotten Thomas's last name off the top of my head here, but he tweets at Celtic.
Okay.
And he's the one when I tweeted, what the heck is he carrying in the blue bag? He tweeted back cheese. So I got to give him credit for that. But, to me, it looked like he had decided to leave.
And I really hope, for so
I,
many reasons, that's not the
yes,
case.
I totally agree. I hope he is not. No, maybe he's not. I mean, he's probably going back out now that this crisis is under control to try and help with Rick and the whole herd issue, because he knows that's coming. He doesn't say anything to anybody, but he knows what's happening there. You know what I
Right.
mean? And by the way, I was so glad on the rewatch they show. I rewatched JSS this morning, and they show highlights from the previous episode that are important. So from the premiere, and there was a segment right at the end when the horn starts, or is it when the horn starts? No, it's not when the horn starts. It's after he kills Carter. Rick does. Rick says to Morgan, "You got to go back.
Right.
Got to go back to the community and let people know," or something like that. Because then when JSS started and he shows up in the truck and then
It
he's
explains.
like, why is he there? I don't
Yeah.
understand. He's there, and now it did explain that. I was so glad they showed that. But anyway, so I'm worried, but he could be just going back out to help with that. But something's in that bag. If he was leaving for good, what I would imagine he had a little more than a little bag. Maybe he's going out to kill the wolves.
I really do think that this melding, this blending somehow of him and Carol, we're going to see more of that. I think that I just don't think that story is finished.
Yeah.
I hope I'm right.
I hope you are too, because I'd hate to see Lenny go, but at the same time, this is kind of how they've always dealt with this character. They introduce him, they bring him in, and then they set up a scenario where he stays behind or he leaves,
Right.
and then he comes back later. And they may want to just keep doing that. I don't know. Another good was the whole scene with Eugene and the doctor.
Right.
The doctor was great. I thought she did a great job. I think she's going to be a good addition. When he says, you don't want to be a coward, that made me laugh right out loud.
Yep.
He certainly knows what happens with that. And also when he goes, "Are you a doctor?" And she says, "Are you?" And she says, "I heard that story." That was great. I loved Eugene referring to having the whole fit about the church.
Right.
And how they, I'm sorry, but there's just, there's too many needs right now. Just the thumpers shouldn't have a say. That cracked me up. Let's see. 10 points to Jessie for a badass kill.
Yeah.
And she certainly wasn't kidding when she told Rick she was going to fight.
Yeah, that was my Walker kill of the week. Even without that person being a zombie, I just thought Jessie was great.
And then Aaron's discovery of the photos in the bag. My prediction is that he's going to now agree with Rick, and that they should stop recruiting, because he's going to feel guilty and responsible. And I think this will end up leaving Daryl on his own, going out and doing the recruiting.
I have to tell you, that moment of Aaron finding that bag was the best moment in the episode for me, because he was just so heartbroken.
Yeah.
He played that so well.
Yeah. No, I agree. But, I just feel like you can't – how can he possibly feel responsible? They were almost eaten alive.
Right.
And, he got out of there with the skin of his teeth. And if the bag was left behind, that was just an accident. It's just what happens, It's, but I think it just means, I think it's just the realization for Aaron and for everybody else. You see it also with the scene with Deanna and Maggie, that the Alexandrians are finally starting to realize the world that they live in.
That was one of my goods, actually, is that the Alexandrians are finally starting to get it.
Yeah.
And they're finally starting to respond.
Yeah. Sadly, it's, had to happen in a really brutal way. And with a lot of them, I mean, and Deanna even says it, because at the end, Maggie says, "Well, we're still here." And Deanna says, "Well, not all of us."
Right.
So those were my goods.
So my goods mostly build on yours. I definitely want to talk a little bit about Dr. Denise Cloyd, who is the new doctor in town.
Yep.
She actually played Zoe on Nurse Jackie. Did you ever watch that?
No, but I do know she. I think she was Emmy nominated or Emmy award winning.
I think she won an award, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I did read that.
I'm not totally through Nurse Jackie. I love it. Nurse Jackie is one of those nurses who says things that I always wanted to say when I was a nurse. Some of those things I've started saying now that I'm a nurse practitioner. But anyway, Zoe was a great character on that show. The actress is Merritt Weaver. And
Right.
I agree with you. I think she's going to be a fantastic addition to the crew. And the thing that I really liked about that whole setup with her was Tara pushing at her, Eugene pushing at her, and them basically saying, look, there's no other chance here, so you might as well take the risk.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that ultimately that is going to make her function as a doctor in this community and as a better doctor in this community, because she's going to realize, I'm the only chance these people have. I better
Right.
step up. And they do. Psychiatrists do go through medical school the same
Yes.
way that physicians do. So
Yep.
it's appropriate. It's an appropriate use of her skills.
No, absolutely. I like it though, because it sets her up as a flawed character already. You know what I mean? Which is sets up for all sorts of possible issues. Good
Exactly.
storytelling. Yeah.
Let's see. I also really liked just the whole imagery of Maggie as a mentor, and kind of felt like she was channeling Herschel a little bit.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
That was pretty nice. And again, she's just got kind of that softness around her that we haven't seen in a really long time. So, and we never saw that with her in the beginning. I mean, in the beginning, she was like, hey, Glenn, let's rumble.
Right.
She never had that softness, and now she's got it, which is really interesting.
Right.
So-
No, absolutely. I agree. And, I think they're trying to, set up some things that happen in the storyline in the comic.
In the comics, yeah.
Yeah. And, but I don't know what's going to happen there. I'm worried about Maggie
I'm worried about
this season.
I'm worried about several characters who have some interesting experiences in Alexandria. So I'm hoping that
Yeah.
I'm
I
hoping
think,
they find a different way to tell that story.
Yeah, they're leading us to believe certain things, or leading us to think certain things. Certainly Abraham is a little bit reckless right now,
Right.
and if you read the comic, that some things happen with him at this time frame that are pretty dramatic,
Yeah.
but that could just be a setup. You know what I mean? That could be
It's
a setup.
always so hard to tell what they're going to do with the material
Right.
that's already there, or who they're going to give that role to if they don't give it to the person who experienced it in the comic.
Correct. And I am very worried about Glenn and Maggie's reversing roles in the
I am
comic.
too. I
Yeah.
am too.
Yep.
Another
What
good,
else?
another good, and then we can move on because you covered a lot of my goods. But this is going back to Ross Marquand and Aaron, and once again, it's just a shout out to the actor. I just love the way he plays this character. He just has such a sensitivity and such a connection with this character that it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I agree.
When he's standing there in the hospital setting and he's like, no, I have to help. And he
Right.
goes out and helps in the attack, helps to defend against the attack by the wolves.
Right.
He's so great.
Yeah, he's cool. He's very cool. I really like him. I hope nothing happens to him.
I was just going to say, I hope they hang on to him.
Yeah. Did you catch the references back to the A on the house?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was part of me that was kind of disturbed by that. But the other thing that was interesting is that I was also thinking JSS could be just stay silent, because you have that silent moment with Carol where she's literally weeping on those
Right.
stairs and no one knows. And there's that wolf in the background going after somebody,
Right.
and she's in the foreground weeping.
Well, I don't think was there a wolf going after somebody, or there was the person, the woman was dead. The smoker woman was dead across from her.
It was both. So there was also something going on in the background. And I actually want to say it was Morgan taking on a wolf in the background.
Oh, that could be.
But yeah, it was pretty amazing to see that moment of Carol's, just so much agony.
Yeah.
So quietly.
No, I agree, but I think that A was a echo of, or a
Of Terminus.
of Terminus.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, obviously it was kind of obvious, but at the same time, I think to myself, well, why are they why are the writers trying to take us back to Terminus? And I think it's because it speaks to the dichotomy of the two different philosophies, and that if you lose your Morgan side and you just go with your Carol side, eventually you become
Gareth.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think she was realizing that at that moment, because she says, on that same steps, and we see the A for the first time when she comes upon the Jesse's youngest son.
Right.
And she says to him, look, your father was a bad man and he did horrible things and he's gone. The best thing is to get over it and move on.
That was such a horrible moment.
It was ice cold and
Yeah.
unfeeling.
And you kind of flash back to her with Sophia, and you wonder how she would have responded had the roles been reversed, had someone said something like that to Sophia.
Well, and I think then we come back at the end of the episode. We're on the same stoop. We still got the A reminder, and there's the realization that, she's in tears that, wow, this is emotional. This is hard. This is, unhuman, and I need to, I got to feel this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was powerful.
So what's your bad?
Again, second episode in a row, just practically nothing. The only bad I have is the horn reveal. I thought it was just a big letdown after, you know what I mean? But I think they did that on purpose, because it just caused. There were theories that it was the wolves. There were theories that it was Gabriel's horn, that it was Gabriel doing it. That it was
Ron.
That it was Ron,
Yeah.
that it was people trying to warn and call back Rick's team. It was, it was really this point, the biggest point of discussion about the episode, and then it turned out to be kind of this little thing. And so in that sense, I thought that was a letdown. One interesting thing that I think no one, again, has talked about. I didn't do much research on other reviews after this episode, though, so maybe they are. But why a tractor trailer?
I'm not quite sure about that either. I don't know if they were crashing the gates or...
My guess is the back of that trailer...
Full of walkers.
Full of walkers.
A good point. Because we've seen the wolves use walkers as weapons before.
Correct. So that's what I'm guessing. I'm guessing that has not finished out. That the walker, the horde is going to hit Alexandria, and then that thing's going to get let loose as well, and you're going to have another horde right on top of them inside, coming through on multiple fronts. So,
which, spoiler alert, that's consistent with some of the stuff that happens in the comics as well.
Correct. Yep. Correct.
So,
yep. Yeah. Did you have any bads?
My list was pretty short too. I was really disappointed in Enid's parents, only because I thought, really, they've survived this long and they're that freaking stupid.
Well, survive this long is relative too, but because we have no idea when that was. To me, they were searching for GPS.
Right.
So that struck me as though, relatively soon into the apocalypse.
I thought they were searching for I'm going to lose the word.
Well, they were trying to find something on their GPS.
But they were actually trying to find what are those things that you use in circuits? I'm totally blowing it.
Oh, a fuse?
Yes, they were looking for a fuse.
Oh, it wasn't GPS.
And so they were referencing a fuse trying to get the car running.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think that they actually were further into the apocalypse. And if you look at the timing, we don't really know how long Enid wandered.
Right.
But if you kind of look at just the overall timing, what do we think we are into the apocalypse now? A year and a half?
Yeah, close to 2 years.
So, let's just say they're 1 year and 9 months into the apocalypse. I just was disappointed that they were so stupid that, it would be like, they're coming. They're like, yeah, hold on. We'll get there in just a second.
Yeah, I agree.
mean,
I saw it as being more like along the timeline of like fear, like being more like at the very beginning, the first month or so. That's just what I thought. But the other side of that is that the walkers that showed up looked pretty decayed.
Yeah, they did.
So that doesn't fit with that. But
and I know it was just another storytelling mechanism, but they could have gotten in the car, waited for the walkers to pass, and then gotten it figured out.
Well, they were obviously not very well, experienced in how to deal with them. Because there was only a few. Well, although the ones coming from the back, you didn't know how many there were, but there's only one left chewing. So yeah, I agree. But it didn't take away from it for me.
No, not me either. It just was a moment where I was kind of like, really?
Yeah.
And I guess the only other thing that I had that I was disappointed about, and again, this is a character-based thing, but I was disappointed that Spencer was such a weenie.
Spencer. Oh, yeah, brought the other son.
Yeah, the other son. He just was not very impressive at all. But I think
they're making a comment about politicians and politicians' kids.
Oh man, you and I could go on for hours about that.
Yeah, it was kind of sad. I mean, he couldn't hit a broadside of a barn with that sniper rifle.
No, he couldn't.
And then he chickened out. Although that was a great scene inside the
when Morgan
cab,
took out
the cab of the truck, and Morgan says to him, we got to get in there, we got to help. So are you coming? And the guy he doesn't even say anything.
Yeah,
and Morgan looks at him and shakes his head. But Morgan's so accepting.
Yeah.
It was so humane. He was like, dude, I understand. It makes me sad because I need the help, but I understand. You can't handle it. You're just not there, and so I understand. And that was just like, wow, that was so cool. It was so well done with so little words.
Yeah, it was another beautiful scene.
Yeah.
I mean, even with the letdown of the horn, it was beautiful.
Yeah. I didn't quite get, I guess, then they put Deanna in that truck and they focused quite a bit on her face. And I guess the message there was just like, the horror of the reality of the world is finally tuning into her, maybe.
That's the thing that I'm really seeing, because they did spend a lot of time with big face shots of Deanna, and I think she just looks really broken.
Yeah, I think she's broken, and I think she's realized, for her, if you think back to her story arc, she's been all about rebuilding. She's been all about getting things back on track and getting the world back to normal. And I think that there's this realization in that sequence where she's, in the cab and you're just staring at her face. It's all over. It's all over, and there's no going back. Yeah.
She's realizing that this is the new normal. And I hate that expression, but in the brain injury community, we talk a lot about the new normal.
Yeah, this is the new paradigm.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugly?
So I got to tell you, I loved Mrs. Niedermeyer's death. I mean, my first thought, and I said it on the Biters page, was that is a perfect way to get somebody to quit smoking.
Yeah, right.
It was so shocking. It was so perfect, and it was so out of the blue that I really liked the way that they brought the wolves in. I thought that was perfect.
Yeah, it was unexpected and and a huge a huge from left field kind of play. Yeah.
My husband had not watched it with me the first time, and he watched it with me last night when I did a rewatch, and he looked at me and he said, "What the?" So it was pretty cool.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, I just had one more good that we haven't really covered, and that was Richard, who was up on the wall behind Deanna and Maggie, who becomes the Molotov cocktail.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
That was awesome. Well, again, Deanna having to kind of watch this horrible thing and then see that then on top of that, you have to go over and put them down, and do, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's not enough that they're like burned up and fallen. Now you also got to stab them in the head, it's like,
yes.
So yeah, it was pretty, and now was Richard the guy the kind of tall, balding guy that was really helpful on building stuff with Rick.
I think
Or
that's
is Richard just a name?
I think Richard's just a name.
That's
I think that's Tobin.
Yeah, you're right. That's Tobin. Okay. My ugly was just, again, the creative storytelling, the unique use of the tools of film, and how they chose to, tell the story visually as well as, in dialogue and everything. Like last week with the black and white and the time jumping, just super creative, the lighting, like that scene where Enid turns her back and the sun's coming up over over Alexandria. Just stuff like that was just top notch, just top notch. The real time record, 45 minutes of the attack with the timer is fantastic. My ugly is pretty much the same as my ugly for last time. And that's a first.
I have just a handful of notes, and we've talked about most of them. But one of the things that I did want to point out is I thought that the adolescent drama between Enid, Ron, and Carl, sorry, one of my dogs is barking in the background, was such an interesting contrast to the adolescent drama in Fear the Walking Dead.
Right.
And it just kind of shows, again, that Fear the Walking Dead has some growth that it needs to do, and it shows how much further along in this whole experience the characters that we know and love in The Walking Dead are.
Right. No, I agree.
The other thing I was thinking is that, the theme that we heard over and over again from Rick and a little bit from Morgan in the season premiere was Rick doesn't take chances anymore. And I looked at my husband last night and I said, you know what? The person who doesn't take chances anymore is Carol. Right. No,
absolutely. But you pay a price for that.
You do. And, we really, really saw that. And I think we're going to continue to see that. I think she might actually heal, though. I mean, I think there might actually be some healing that comes out of this last... her connection with Morgan, the discussions that they've had, I think we might actually see some regeneration in Carol.
Yep. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Okay, so I think that wraps up.
I think it does.
JSS.
Yeah.
Another great episode.
Yeah.
And so just a couple of quick comments I thought I'll read real quick.
Okay, very good.
Nikki Campbell wrote in, Spy or Not, this was one of the best episodes yet of Walking Dead. It is definitely in my top 5. Right after Carol put the casserole in the oven, it was nonstop, and I loved every second of it. You have Marnell wrote in, I think, right?
I do, but that actually brings up what I wanted to say about Kevin Smith's comment on The Walking Dead, or on The Talking Dead, rather. So he put this in his top 4 or 5 episodes of The Walking Dead, which was pretty cool. So she shares some opinion with Kevin Smith, who I think is a fantastic director and actor. I won't go into how he actually described the episode to Paul Bettany. People can watch it if they want to.
Yeah, that was the oral satisfaction thing, right? Yes.
It just went on and on and on. Okay, so Marnell, who is actually my little sister, I think I've said that before, she said, James and I disagree on something. I think Enid is a wolf spy, a reluctant one, but a spy nonetheless. Is anyone else worried that Carol left the super nervous lady guarding the armory with a gun pointed at the door, finger on the trigger?
Somebody's going to open that up and get blasted, huh? James Chapman wrote in, I don't believe that Enid is a member of the Wolves. So, we go back and forth.
Right.
You got Nikki saying spy or not. It was great. Marnell saying, she's a spy. James saying, nope, she's not a spy. So everybody's all over the place.
They are.
But she definitely, in his opinion, she knows something about the residents of Alexandria. She's run across them in the woods, so maybe the wolves, when she sneaks out of the town. I think she knows how big and bad they are. The only place my theory falls apart is in her statement about that's how we, but I don't believe that Enid is bad. I think she's honestly running scared. Let's talk about how good this episode was. Nothing shows how good a show is until you can have an episode with none of your main cast. Instead, you run all of your secondary cast and they steal the show. It's a great point, know. The interplay between Carol and Morgan, the pain they both face, but from opposite sides of the same coin. The good, the bad. Can no one other than Rick's group hit anything with a gun? And why, for God's sakes, he points out that, they got an armory full of rifles and everything, and they all take 38s, which is kind of stupid. I agree.
My husband said the same thing last night. He's like, man, they're going to have to do a lot of reloading.
Yeah, exactly.
I said, well, it is Carol.
That's true. Carl's smart. He got the M16 going.
Yeah, there you go.
The Ugly, it seems, I didn't quite understand his Ugly. The Ugly, it seems like they are trying too hard. The byplay between a lot of the characters just seems off. I'm not sure what he meant by that, but a good Ugly was the egg timer. Carol putting her casserole in the oven and then killing everyone in Alexandria and being back in time to eat. Just perfect. And then we had a note from Gijo.
Yeah, so Gijo says, in-freaking-credible. I think this could be the best season of this show. Carol is my hero. Morgan is idealistic but naive. They need to annihilate invaders like that. Snuff them out so they can't even warn their friends if they have any. So I agree with Gijo because I think that those wolves that went out the gate are going to be trouble. Yeah. Gijo says, so did Morgan get a head start on everyone? He got there way ahead of everyone, or did they just send him ahead to stop the horn? Well, you answered that.
Right.
He got sent ahead to talk to the people of Alexandria. That first wolf killing of the smoking lady was jarring. Out of nowhere, that pristine Americana lifestyle is shattered. So much just in the time it takes to cook a casserole.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Diane, it's been great and awesome to recover to get back on the mic here. And I look forward to watching tonight's episode and then going over it on Tuesday with you. I want to say thanks again to all the listeners that have been patient while we are going through this transition.
I agree.
And I think Diane's going to do a fantastic job, and you are in good hands with her.
Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. So definitely contact us at. And by the way, I did a test while we were here at the beginning of the show. I said that the writer from Germany, Susan, had said there was some sort of issue with the biterspodcast@gmail.com, but I sent a test to myself and I got it. So that is still working fine as far as I can tell. Biterspodcast@gmail.com.
I would encourage Susan to get on the Facebook page because that's always a good way to find us.
Absolutely. And then, of course, Southgate Media Group at gmail.com. You can also reach us. The Facebook page is the best place. I tweet at BatmanKM. You can also follow me there. And I don't know, Diane, do you tweet?
I tweet, but I'm going to have to look up what my handle is because obviously I don't tweet very often. But I promise I'll have that for the next show.
All right, cool.
I just want to take a minute to say thank you to everybody so much for giving me this chance. This is so exciting. I never thought I would have a chance to podcast about this show that I love so much. And
that's great.
And I have to thank Marnell and James because they're the ones who got me hooked on this show.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you. I would thank them as well because without you being part of the show, you wouldn't be here now. And I think you're doing a great job, and I think you're going to do a wonderful job. So
awesome.
And I want to say thanks to everybody again for all the support over the last year or two that we've been doing Biters. For Jeff and I know I'm sure I speak for him as well, and how much we appreciate all the support and nice, kind words and everything. So, and we'll do our best to make this transition as painless as possible.
And I just want to say to the fans before we go, we're not going to let these guys off the hook that easily. So I'm hoping if we don't see you before, well, we're obviously going to see you Tuesday, but if we don't see you before the mid-season finale, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to that too. That'll be a blast.
Awesome. Hey, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks, Diane. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.